Good evening. I'd like to call the Curriculum and Evaluation Committee meeting together to order and together. It is Monday, August 20th. It's 6 p.m. 02, almost 6:05, and we are in the North Boardroom. Ms. Van Twyver is here. Ms. Raymond?
Here.
Ms. Timmons? Ms. Porter?
Here.
Dr. McKinney's here, and Mr. Kaufman's here. We have three things on the agenda tonight. The first one is the Teacher Ease presentation and discussion, and then Dr. McKinney is going to follow up on some of the questions on instructional materials from our June meeting, and then we're going to have an end-of-year report on iReady. So, Dr. McKinney, if you would introduce your guest and proceed with Teacher Ease.
I'd like to introduce Jen Grantham, who's our K-8 technology coach, and she's also been key in leadership for standards-based grading over the past number of years, and she's here to speak to Teacher Ease and a proposal before the board.
Very good.
Good evening. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about Teacher Ease and a proposal to implement a new grading system here in Nashua. Why a new platform, you ask? I'm sure as part of the Board of Education over the past 5 to 6 years, you've heard some challenging comments in regards to standards-based reporting and grading, and many of those challenges have arisen due to our X2 platform. It's the technology that has really hindered the process for teachers. So in X2, we have very cumbersome input. Teachers have complained of losing grades and comments. Currently prints only in English, and it is really challenging, and it is costly for the district every time we edit or reconfigure the report card. Why Teacher Ease? It has a very easy interface for staff. It's time-saving. The grade book links directly to the report card, so as teachers are collecting evidence on student progress, it will automatically sync with the report card, which is fantastic. It can print in English and Spanish. The report card can be easily changed, and it is designed specifically to use with standards-based reporting. Low use of Aspen Gradebook. So at the elementary level, we have a very low percentage of teachers. I would venture to guess, I don't have the exact number for you, but it's fewer than 10 across the district who use the X2 Aspen Gradebook. Many teachers use paper and pencil to record evidence on student growth and progress because of the following 3 bullet points. The number of clicks it takes in Aspen to get information, they lose data, grades, and comments, and it's very difficult and challenging to configure the report cards. So it's hard to align the standards to the assignment when there are multiple standards in one assignment. It's not impossible, but it's a challenge. The number 1 priority is the ease of use for teachers and families. And this quote we found kind of key to where we are in Nashua. The dust has kind of settled on the implementation of standards-based grading. Many teachers are finding it's no more work, it's just a different routine. And what we'd like to offer them is a routine that allows them to much more easily collect that information and data and seamlessly integrate it into the report card. This is a long slide. I'm not going to read every single piece to you on this slide, but these are some of the advantages, and I'll hit up some of the highlights, but you're welcome to ask about any others that you see on here. Over the past 5 years, as we've worked on designing the report card and we've brought iterations back to the Board of Education over different times, one of the major pushes back from teachers was the interface within Aspen to be able to see the standard and what the full language of that standard was going to appear on the report card. In Aspen, it has some short speak, some text speak, where, for example, it might say asks and answers, when the real standard is asks and answers questions across 2 texts and blah, 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 blah. There's a much longer explanation for what that is, but because of truncation of the comments, they're unable to see what that full standard is without clicking into another screen, pulling up another screen, and then you're stuck in that screen for input rather than being able to put in a whole class at a time. In Teacherese, they have the ability to have that truncated comment so that you can see just the shortened version of the standard. But in addition, if you hover over that standard, the full language of the standard will pop up, which will make it very user-friendly and easy for teachers to put in that information and know where they stand. It allows teachers to differentiate between summative and formative assessments. Additionally, there's going to be eventually easier communication with parents. Currently, parents do not access X2 portal for undergrade 6. So our elementary students currently don't get information in regards to grading and reporting other than in the progress reports and report cards that go home each trimester. Additionally, Teacherese integrates seamlessly through Clever with our X2 platform, so we're still maintaining X2 as our student information system, but we have the ability to get that information straight from Aspen and integrate it very easily across to Teacherese. And we have the ability to configure it for what we need it to say. We're not taking somebody else's report card and making it ours. We're taking ours and they're configuring it for us if we get to that point. The number of clicks for teachers will decrease. And you'll be able to see student grades from trimester to trimester, which currently involves clicking into different screens in Aspen. Additionally, when teachers grade an assessment, that assessment will carry over immediately into the report card. So teachers will no longer have to necessarily do report cards. By keeping the gradebook all along throughout the trimester, those grades will automatically populate the report card. The teacher will then be able to go in and see where the scores fall and alter, if needed, up or down based on performance for students. So the teachers still have the end goal in grading and the right to override if needed, but that automatic population will really save some teacher time. The gradebook in Teacherese is also, if you take a look at this, it's much more intuitive to teachers. If you think about the old log that teachers used to, the big red gradebook that we all used to have back in the day, where you wrote down the students' names down the left-hand side and the assignments across the top, and then you'd put the scores in for how they were performing. This is very similar. And don't get thrown off by the numbers. This is just a test page from Teacherese. We would still be able to use our current language. Our MPBN would still appear here if we were to adopt this. But as you can see, imagine as a teacher being able to collect real-time data and being able to see where the students are performing, where students are performing on target for grade level or where they're challenged or lacking. In this case, the blue for this school district is above grade level, the green is on grade level, yellow is slightly below grade level, and red is needing and requiring intervention. You have the ability within Teacherese to also click, if I show you right up here, if I click on this little arrow system as a teacher, it's going to reorder my students based on that standard by high to low. So then I'm going to be able to very quickly alter my groups in my classroom and redefine my instruction based on the standard and help get those kids moving along to reading on grade level by third grade, which is our goal, right?
Absolutely. Too bad you're...
So we're able to monitor trends and better differentiate for our students with this gradebook system, and we're able to link multiple standards to a single assessment. So in that case, let's say we were giving a math exit ticket and there were multiple standards assigned to that exit ticket, you would be able to put in appropriate for numbers and operations base 10, and you could also put in for maybe a graphing skill that was on that same assessment, but you could differentiate the two scores and in one assessment really have two pieces of evidence because you're able to demonstrate their understanding in the two different areas, which is really great. Teacherese was also designed by educators for educators, so it's not taking a square peg and trying to stick it in a round hole. It's not taking a traditional grade book and trying to make it standards-based. This was designed for standards-based grading based on the works of Marzano, Wormelli, and really some great educators out there who talk about the right way to grade with standards-based grading. So the data flows from the assessment into the gradebook, and then from the gradebook into the report card. So you just see that that flow aligns really nicely. In this case, it's talking a little bit about the LMS, the Learning Management System, which is another piece that Teacher Ease offers. And what that really is have you ever heard of Teachers Pay Teachers? If you haven't, it's something to research. Teachers use it a lot.
Say it again,
It's
please.
called Teachers Pay Teachers.
Pay?
Teachers, P-A-Y, teachers. Teachers use it a lot. It's a resource where you can type in, I'm currently working on numbers and operations in base 10 in first grade, and I can type in the standard. I can put it into Teachers Pay Teachers, and I'm going to come back with these teachers that have designed pretty lessons and activities and ideas from across the country. But is it truly towards that standard? Is it truly towards that understanding? We're getting lots of different information, and anybody can post to that platform. In this case, it's like a Nashua learning management system where I can be a kindergarten teacher at Mount Pleasant Elementary School. I can have an outstanding activity that I did in Eureka that really helps support my students' learning. I can post it to the learning management system, and a teacher at Charlotte Avenue could pull that same activity and be able to collaborate, talk about PLCs. It takes us from a professional learning community really to in Nashua, a professional learning network where teachers are able to collaborate across school borders, which is fantastic. We can also collect mastery data to show that the students are performing on grade level or above, which is our goal. And if they're not, it allows us to revisit the areas where they are relatively weak. And then, as I said, once the assessments are done, the teachers are able to put it straight into the gradebook. And then from the gradebook, it seamlessly integrates with the report card because the language is all tied together. So Teacher Ease can quickly create a report card. As I said to you, each time we make an edit, whether it's adding a column, adding a row, and Mrs. Porter can speak to this from being back in the classroom because she worked with me on the committee as we designed it. It would be a process to get what seems like a slight tweak on our part to go through Aspen and get those columns added or things changed as we went forward. So you have the ability to quickly create a report card based on the data and evidence that we have as part of our Nashua report card. It would match what we currently have. We wouldn't be looking to change anything huge. If it's dropping a 4 and replacing it with a 2, that might be some tweaking that took place, but no large changes took place in any redesign. So teacher collaboration, as I talked about in the LMS, allows that to really lighten the load. We frequently hear teachers want time. Teachers want the ability to collaborate and work across schools and across their grade level. And this is a way that they can do this virtually as well. So being able to align curriculum maps. So Dr. McKinney and the curriculum office are going to be able to post things from the district level that are going to help teachers learn and grow. We will also be able to post exemplar lesson plans of things that are going really well. We'll be able to have common informative assessments and common summative assessments across the district or across a school. And we'll be able to talk about the same learning targets across each school. So it's not a question of one school working in one area and another school working in another area. It's really going to allow for that collaboration to happen across the schools and the grade levels. And our rubrics are already aligned. It's some work that has been done over the past 5 years, again, in regards to taking that standard language and taking a look at what an M looks like, or what a P looks like, or what a B looks like. So what does it look like in regards to Teacher Ease onboarding with Nashua? Is an initial setup where we have some conversation with the Teacher Ease folks, and they're based out of Chicago, I believe. Then they will have an admin training or have had a little conversation with our IT staff and with some of us in the curriculum office to talk about what that might look like as they come on board or if they are able to come on board. Then they will have a train the trainer instructor training to be able to help train our teachers to go back and support other teachers in the classroom. And this is my favorite part. See that circle at the end? Ongoing support. So currently, If a teacher is at home working on his or her report cards on a weekend and something blows up in Aspen, something happens next to, they lose their grades, something disappears, they fill in a help desk to our internal help desk. Our wonderful IT staff does their very best to keep on that and keep an eye on it. But I can tell you, I've fielded many phone calls from teachers in tears, teachers worried that they're losing everything that they've just spent hours working on their weekend. What's great about this is anybody in the Nashua School District has the right to call directly to Teacher Ease, and they have a 24-hour support line to be able to get that help and support. If they're struggling or stuck, they can directly access. They can write around our internal help desk, which is awesome, but also allows them that access and opportunity outside of our internal help desk. So just the last piece, I think, this is our last slide, is to talk a little bit about where Common Goal and Teacher Ease comes from. It started as a web-based gradebook in 2001. It's located in Chicago. It's a software for standards-based learning. And just to tell you, it's in over 1,000 schools, services over 50,000 teachers, and services over 500,000 students and parents across the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to see this because we've had a lot of consternation over X2 and its ability to do what we needed. How long has the district been looking into a replacement for that part of X2?
We started in the fall of last year. We looked at probably 7 different platforms and then started narrowing it down to about 2 or 3, and then we presented those to a group of teachers on the in-service day. They got an overview, a half-day overview from each of the 2 that were present during that day, and this was the one that the teachers selected.
I'm concerned about I'd like to know about how many teachers have experienced this, so that we have unification in wanting to use it. And
so the group that met to look at the 2 platforms represented all grade levels, including middle school. We brought middle school representation, even though they're not changing their grading system, but we just wanted them to be able to see the platforms that we were taking a look at, maybe thinking to the future at some point of shifting that over. But we had representation from all 12 elementary schools, different grade levels. We made sure that there were representation from kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. And we had a few middle school teachers and a middle school administrator there as well as the entire IT staff came to both presentations to support, to double check.
IT is in on this also. They agree with it. My concern is that, we don't want to get into using this product if everybody isn't going to be on board with it and have another big hairy discussion about its good parts and its bad parts, I'm saying, and I also would like to know how much it's going to cost the district.
So to begin with, we're only doing it at the elementary level, who is already participating in standards-based reporting. So it's not a new system for them in regards to the standards-based grading. They're currently grading with standards-based. This is not changing anything except for the manner of input. We have a plan in place with Dr. McKinney and the curriculum office in regards to, if approved here at the school board, to move ahead with a train-the-trainer model where we would pull together teachers in each building, a K-2 teacher and a 3-5 teacher who would be housed in that school, who is deeply trained in using Teacher Ease. They'll be there as a support person when reporting times comes around, or when teachers have questions. They're going to be able to go to those people directly in the school. Additionally, we have thoughts, if approved, to move ahead with some professional development on the first day of school for teachers all to get the same presentation, much like we did when we initially rolled out report cards, to have that common presentation. So everybody is getting the same language, everybody is getting the same training, and finding ways to be creative about keeping that training that's accessible virtually for teachers. So if they're not able to physically attend on that day, we've talked about recording with ETV coming in and being able to record for us, so that we can post it to a YouTube channel or have it be ready for if a teacher wants to sit at home on a Friday night and click through and see that video, they're seeing the same exact training that the trainers are getting.
So how much is this going to cost us? That's the ultimate question, you know? And how much did it cost us, I guess I should say? Or did it?
I'm looking for a motion to support $36,000 to move forward with teacheries.
So this would be for the 18-19 fiscal year?
Yes, ma'am.
The other thing I was concerned about is the relationship between X2 and Teacher Ease. I assume that there'd be data that needs to be pulled out of X2 that can be fed right into Teacher Ease, and is there anything going back that has to be maintained by X2?
So this is fantastic, and I want to give a kudos to Kathy Berry at the IT department, if she's out there watching. Good job, Kathy. She has been working on learning a system that is a nationwide system called Clever, like just the word, you're really smart, Clever. And what it does is it takes information from a student information system, it encrypts it so that we're not sharing any information across state lines. It keeps it safe in the cloud. It's FERPA approved. It's safe for us to utilize because it's used by districts across the world. And she has taken and worked with Clever to make sure that that data that needs to go out from Aspen X2 goes to Clever, and then from Clever it goes to Teacher Ease. And it also, they talk back and forth, so each night at midnight, the system reconfigures and will pick up any changes to the system, any students that transition from one school to another. It will seamlessly integrate with Teacher Ease and take that information straight over.
I'm glad you brought that up about updating every night, because we had that problem with X2, that it didn't, and
Clever is a miraculous thing. Once we figured it out, it was a little hairy when we started, but we're
but there is no
when I
direct...
say we, Kathy is fantastic. She's getting it all together.
Right. So there's no direct export function in X2 to Teacher Ease, and no import function backwards?
There could have been. It was something that we had a conversation, Dr. McKinney, myself, and the IT department had a conversation in regards to some concerns about who in our district would be responsible for keeping that file live and updated. Because you could do a CSV file. I could get into all the tech speak with you right now, but you could do a CSV file dump of data each night, but that requires somebody downloading, uploading, trading over, talking to Teacher Ease, versus Clever, which is seamless and happens automatically. There are a few buttons that they need to click, but it's designed for this purpose, to have information be encrypted, carried over, and returned in an accurate fashion.
IT has been through that process already?
It works for many of the systems we use. Clever has a sync also for iReady. Clever works to talk to web-based platforms from school districts, student information systems.
But have they used that product, Clever?
Yes, it's
They've
in
been
use.
through that process?
It's in use right now for iReady. For example, if you had students moving between schools, you would have to change that file and then upload it to iReady every day. Why not have a program that does it overnight and takes care of that for you? So if we have kids that are in flux, moving from school to school, or any of those sort of things changes, it updates their account. That's why there's also like a delay when a new student registers and they don't have their account information right away. It takes 24 hours to kind of update that information, have it available for the teacher.
Well, I'm really encouraged by this. Any questions from the group? Yes, Ms. Raymond.
Thank you. So the 36,000 that you're asking for now is only for elementary schools?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a plan to expand this district-wide so that we have one system for everybody?
That plan would be ongoing with 2 weeks to the first day of school. We're just looking straight ahead, but I think we have to revisit how this product works along with our competency-based grading at the high school and then our ongoing work at the middle school. So to answer your question, could this be a platform that works K-12? Absolutely.
Is that the goal?
I'd like to hear feedback after a year of implementation and see where we are. But I do think everything I've heard and seen about this platform is a huge time saver for teachers. It's a collaboration tool. From frankly saves in cost in terms of the printing that happens at the elementary level. And it has the capacity as well to give instant feedback to teachers and parents on student performance. So there's a feature that we'd be rolling out later where the parents can have an app where they could see their kids' grades live at the elementary school.
That
But
was the
also-
other point that we had.
Yep.
A question was that parents couldn't get the right data out of it, couldn't get what they wanted out of it.
The other piece here is, as we have more and more Chromebooks deployed through the elementary schools, Teacher Ease has the capacity to work with Google Classroom. So if you were to give a assessment in Google Classroom, you could have the information show up in Teacher Ease here. So if I just gave a 5-question multiple choice quiz after a short lesson to see where I am with student learning, the kids could take it online and boom, I get to see it, and that could count as a formative assessment, and I'd have it right there in my gradebook. Saves me time as a teacher. I can sort the kids, see which ones got it, ones that need a little reteaching. I can pull them into a group and move learning forward. So there's a lot of capacity within this program.
And you say that this is one of 5 or 6 other products you looked at?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So-
Ms. Porter?
So are you envisioning this will start right away in this school year in September?
Over the next 3 weeks, we have training forthcoming for Train the Trainer. We're going to have a PowerPoint opening day piece for principals to share with their faculty, and then ongoing support with a K-2 person in each building and a 3 to 5.
So they would be using this for the first trimester report card, teachers?
That would be the hope, yes.
Okay, so I think they're going to find this easier, so I'm imagining that it's not going to be that difficult because they're inputting just into a different platform, which is seeming to be a little bit more user-friendly.
We hope so. And there actually would be less inputting. I mean, certainly at the younger grades, you may not be giving some of those online features of quizzing, but at the intermediate grades, you're not inputting it, it's grading, and you can override the grade and look back in
Right.
it, but you are saving some time instead of having to put everything into X2.
So is it going live to parents at the same time?
We're going to do a slow release on the piece to parents until we're
I think
comfortable
that's
with where
smart.
we are.
Yeah. Okay.
It allows for the learning curve to take place with the teachers before the parents are brought on board, because the old statement of GIGO, I don't know if you've ever heard of GIGO, but garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have the data in and parents go to look and the teachers are still learning, then there's going to be frustration on the parent level. So we have to give the teachers the opportunity to learn the new platform, become comfortable with inputting grades rather than into a paper gradebook, into a technological gradebook, and then move forward from there.
Is there any kind of alert that tells the teacher, hey, you haven't put your grades in for this?
I believe there's
Better do it?
I believe there's a setting that we can set at the district level to just remind teachers via email to upload grades on a Friday afternoon or whatever it is. Just teachers have the right to keep a grade book as they want as part of the teacher contract. So we can't mandate that every piece is going to be.
But that's another problem I've heard from parents was that, hey, there's nothing in there for me to look at. So, okay. Susan, if I could just let 2 questions over here and I'll come back to you.
Yep.
Which one is first? And Doris, or Ms. Hohensie arrived at 6:15. The record she'll show it.
Thank you, I'm sorry, I thought it was starting at 6:30, my apologies. Is this 36,000 a subscription, so it's an annual cost? Or do we buy the software and we own it?
That's a good question. I'd have to come back with more information. I'm only looking to the year ahead. Oh, do you have the information? Hold on one second.
So there are components of that would be a yearly cost. I don't have the exact number that would be the yearly subscription. I didn't bring my sparkly notebook in with me, which would have told you that information. But it is an online renewable subscription that just as we do with X2, there's a cost associated with participating in X2 each year. This would just be an additional cost. But it wouldn't be the 36,000 because that's a question of building everything. So
Right.
that's
Well, my thought was if we're doing this in middle, elementary, and high school, is it going to be $100,000 a year once we're fully implemented? That was my concern. That's a big subscription.
The more schools that you put into the system, the more schools that apply to the system, the smaller the cost is. It's typical with any licensing agreement when you start to look at district-wide, especially in a district of Nashua size. The companies are excited to get large districts on board, so they tend to bring the cost down per pupil.
Could we get that cost? What's the initial cost and what's the recurring cost? Because that would be very important in terms of emotion. Also, I have a question on how we can't implement this in the middle school because we don't have the competency-based grading. And I think we had a motion last year that we were asking the administration to come back to the board and help us inform our decision-making by showing how successful the competency-based grading was in the high school, whether it improved learning before we were going to make a decision on the middle school. That was a motion that the board made, I guess it was last fall, maybe the end of last summer, I don't know. We were supposed to get it right away. I think Dr. Murataki was the chair of curriculum when that motion went through. So he asked that we get it as soon as possible, so we're still waiting for that. So that would be very helpful if you could get that information to the board.
I'll check with Ms. Kinsella and check the minutes and bring that to Ms.
It would be
Fitzpatrick's.
It'd be under the motions page. You could do a search on the motions and you'll find board motions. You'll find that motion
Yeah.
in there.
Are you familiar with the file? It's under
I
the
was-
Board of Education, and it's all the motions that have made at the board level for the last umpty years, so you can,
Mhm. I was just hoping to finish my comment.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'll bring it to Ms. Fitzpatrick's attention. She does have a committee that's convening around the middle school piece, but I will go back and check the motion, bring it forth, as well as bring back the costs per year for teacheries.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Coffin?
Thank you. You guys did a great job asking questions. I'm able to take a few off my list. But I have a couple of questions. The first one, is this in our IT budget that we just passed, or is this incremental money?
This is in the curriculum budget.
It is in the it's in the curriculum budget, not in the IT budget.
It's still in the curriculum budget.
Okay.
Isn't that where it
'cause-
should be?
Actually, it's all, I thought everything was sitting in the IT budget, because that's where we pay for X2, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the X2 costs are about $100,000 a year, if I'm not mistaken.
We would continue to subscribe to X2 Aspen for our student information system. This is not a proposal to leave Aspen as a student information system. This is simply a proposal to shift the grade book out of Aspen and into Teacher-Ease. So we would still need to, in order to track attendance, in order to track behavior office referrals and different information that is still being kept, demographic information, attendance, student photographs are all still housed in Aspen X2. We wouldn't be discontinuing our relationship with Aspen, just
So,
moving over.
no, I appreciate that clarification. So the problem is, if we do roll this out over time, likely to the high school, who knows what's going to happen in the middle school. If you're dealing with similar numbers of people in elementary and high school, I'm guessing they're pretty close. Actually, there might be more elementary. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But if your costs are, even if it's $36,000 to implement the same functionality in the high school, you just increased we've just increased spending by another $70,000. And X2 is a bear. We've made significant investments in hardware the last 2 years where we can now X2 is run locally. In other words, we have the equipment, we run the servers, and we perform that locally. It's not over the internet or in the cloud, as they like to say. It's a local thing. So IT doesn't need an extra person to support this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, please confirm that as part of your proposal. I mean, we can't add a person at this point in the budget, but we would need to know that for next year. I'm concerned that,
We've met with technology more than 5 times jointly between curriculum and technology for this rollout. I think we're on the same page.
well, I would think you would have the answer to that. So the answer is no, they do not need an extra person, but you were cautious in answering that. So that's,
So
I think that could be definitive, could it not?
the hesitation, I believe, in Dr. McKinney's voice might have something to do with myself and my departure, but the technology teacher coach would be a support role in this case to support elementary. So whomever takes my role would be that support person. So it's not an additional budget cost, it's the replacement of.
Okay, so it's not an IT function to support this. It's going to be done through the curriculum.
In conjunction, the conversations that we've had throughout the winter and the spring this year were the conversations about where the tech coach would play the part in the curriculum conversations and making sure the standards were updated, which is what has been on my plate for the past 5 years in regards to standards-based reporting as we've gone through the whole process. And I've come to present several times in regards to what elementary standards-based looks like, and in addition, middle school standards-based look like. So that we've had the conversation in regards to what the tech coach role is and what parts that IT will help support and service.
Okay, so you have agreements with IT that everything is covered and they will not need a technical resource?
I think one of the areas of growth is we have curriculum, we have the technology department, and right now we have Ms. Grantham. And while they've been working on a technology plan, I do see a need for growth with instructional technology and finding either defined roles or a willingness to share responsibility for both. Because I hear what you're saying, this kind of falls in both territories. It is kind of an academic piece, but it does have a technological background. So they will be participating in the trainings. They've been in on the meetings. We certainly need their technical expertise, but we also need somebody who also has the academic piece as well as understanding the formative, the summative, and all the standards-based components that go along with it as well.
One more question, if I may, Ms. Antwerper.
Sorry, Mr. Kaufman, I just was remembering as we were having this conversation, coming back to this slide, and how this is a little bit different than Aspen and a little bit different in that we have access to Teacher Ease personnel and Teacher Ease staff. Any of our elementary teachers, any elementary principal, anybody who puts their hands in the Teacher Ease cookie part can call straight up to Teacher Ease and get support that way. So that alleviates a little bit of the financial strain or stress on our IT department in that if there are calls that they're too strapped to field, we can direct them straight to Teacher Ease.
It's easy to send them over, but the fact is don't kid yourself. There's a cost built into their price for them to answer those phone calls. But the question I have, you spoke to having to move data on a regular basis, on a nightly basis, if I understand you correctly, from the existing systems or to the cloud or the grades and that's automated through scripting that the IT department is helping with. So my question,
Actually, can I just answer that question really quickly because it sounds like it's a multi-part. I want to make sure that I don't miss that part. So Clever is an interface that is designed for upload to any web-based platform. There is no coding that has to happen on our end. It is simply a click of buttons to indicate what information we want to share at that point based on what the information that the system we're sending it to needs. We use it for iReady, and we would use it for Teacher Ease in this case. And it is designed with that purpose in mind to have that nightly update because in schools, data is ever changing. You have a child whose birth date happens and they change from 8 to 9, or they go from moving from Mount Pleasant Elementary School to Ledge Street School, or they go from one class to another class for another reason. By having that constant update of information, we're getting our best information in the system, so it's the most accurate information as we move forward.
Okay, so 2 questions come. The first one is, does a human select the check boxes that Clever uses?
That was where I gave Kathy Berry the raise the
Okay,
roof, that
so-
she did initially check those boxes. But once the boxes are checked and we are certain that the system is in the circle, flowing in the right direction, it's just a review. It's not a question of having to actively ensure those are still clicked
So
ongoing.
the technical term is there, once your parameters have been established, the transfer is scripted on a probably midnight basis, it's timed. So that helps.
How did you know midnight was the exact time that it
Told us.
happens? 12:01.
He told us. But my other question, which was what I was trying to get at before, is there a cost to migrate initially up front? The 36,000 is all inclusive?
The 36,000 includes the migration to Clever and the return back from information from Clever. So Clever is free of charge to Nashua.
For the first year?
Nope, Clever is free. Clever charges teacheries. Clever doesn't charge us. So as part of their agreement is that they will not, and we will not incur a charge for Clever. Their agreement with the companies that say that they will provide this service is they charge the company, not the end user.
Okay, so let me ask this question. The $36,000 is all inclusive of the training, the support, the whole 9 yards, as it were?
Yes.
And we would have to take out a contract? There would ultimately be a contract between us and the teacheries people for the $36,000?
Yeah, when those contracts come through, they go through Mr. Donovan's office, he approves them, signs off on them.
Actually, it
come
comes
back
to
to
the
the
board through the finance committee that approves them. So, okay, I had one other question.
I'm going to start cutting you off.
Okay, let me think of it because it's actually important.
Okay.
No, go right ahead, but
All right,
come back
mine's
to me.
okay, I'll give you a little time to think. I really like the ongoing support, that every teacher can actually call up and get an answer right away. Is that a 24/7? So if it's Sunday afternoon and they're stuck, they can call and get it. The other question I had was about the the report cards. We are not going to redesign the report cards, right? They can be automatically uploaded and used?
We can take the information straight from our current report card and upload it straight into Teacher Ease, and they will, within that 36,000, produce the report that will reflect our report card, not one based on anything else.
Because we did spend a lot of time working on that report card.
Yes, we have.
And then-
142 iterations later, yes, we have.
I remember that. How about middle school? What are we going to do about middle school? Are we going to go to, I mean, we never finished that work. We didn't. We did a high school and we did elementary, but we never, we put you on hold for middle school.
We were in a holding pattern because at the time it was the interim superintendent and the interim assistant superintendent, so it was back to Dr. Brown and Mr. Boucher and Mr. Frederickson. And because it was an interim status and because there were so many things in question as we were moving forward, we were put in a holding pattern. So we had done a great deal, the lion's share of the work in regards to middle school standards-based reporting / competency grading to kind of bridge the gap between. And I think if I recall correctly, sitting here on one of those evenings talking about really the need to have a common grading system K to 12. But we weren't at that point where we were ready to make a decision if we were moving in either direction. So we just put middle school on hold. Conversations have not continued with, especially where the contract situation was last year and committees not taking place. But I know in conversations with Mrs. Fitzpatrick, really feeling the need to really bridge that gap in middle school and have them flow from, it's strange for parents to have students functioning in standards-based reporting at the elementary level, then go back to traditional grading at the middle school, and then go to competency at the high school. These two speak to each other. This one doesn't speak. So we really need to match that and to bridge that gap.
So is any work going to be done on that this year, Dr. McKinney?
Yes, I believe Mrs. Fitzpatrick has plans to move that work forward. If you would like an update, I can invite her to a meeting at your discretion.
Sometime in the future. would be
Okay,
good.
thank you.
When she has a little meat on it. So did you get your thoughts together? Okay, Mr. Kaufman.
So when I joined the board, X2 had been around a while, but they migrated and implemented the whole new competency grading stuff. And I remember one of the very first board meetings I attended was Adam Marcoux, the union president, pleading for help from the board because the implementation of X2 was such a mess. And if I recall correctly, they put out some, I'll call it test software, got feedback, and implemented something completely different that was never tested. Do you recall that?
Just to clarify, you're speaking about competencies?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so here's my concern. There should be, and I would hope the IT people would have suggested this, there needs to be some discipline in implementing you're going through 12 schools, right? So I'm concerned, although I think it's an ambitious plan, having worked in the software industry, going and implementing something in 12 schools at the same time, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before school starts, personally, I think it's a little irresponsible. And I think you should be considering 1 or 2 schools where you can try it out, see what the experience is, maybe after the first trimester, implement it on a wider scale. I think the plan is very high risk because no software gets implemented the way they tell you it's going to be, okay? As well-intended as they are, and it's going to just work, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, and it doesn't. And testing and knowing maybe they have tested the movement of the data. It sounds like that has been tested. But I would ask that you implement it on a smaller scale before you go on the whole scale. And you can't, you want to put this slide up? Let me tell you the problems I have with it. 1,000 schools is not a lot of schools. What, there's 143,000? That was a huge number of schools in the United States. We have 11,000 teachers. This is 50,000 teachers. So we're 20%.
We don't have 11,000.
I'm sorry, we have 1,000 teachers, so we're in 50. Sorry.
I'm gonna say,
Sorry.
there goes
My
the
wrong
budget.
numbers. The point is, they might have had success elsewhere. It doesn't mean we're going to have that same level of success. So I'm asking that you scale back going to 12 schools at once and consider doing a couple before you go full bore.
I think the reason that we have had the conversation about going full board is the frustration level that the teachers are currently feeling in regards to X2. If you went into any elementary school, and I'm going to turn to Mrs. Porter for a second, not to put her on the spot, but as a teacher having just come out of the classroom and experiencing standards-based grading, report card time is very high emotion and high frustration because of the platform. Teachers are very worried about when they put in comments, that they've spent hours and hours writing the comments that are very informative and well-written and detailed, and then they lose the comments. The platform that we have here, that we've talked about, we've tested and vetted, and it saves every 1 to 2 seconds.
How have you tested it?
We've seen it when they came in to do our platform on our network in February, on the 20th, when they came in to present, our teachers were able to click and practice, click and try, see how it looked in a dummy system, not with our standards, but to try it. And our teachers were very impressed with how quickly things saved. With our network and our information and our internet, being able to see, you could automatically see that it saved. And teachers, it was kind of like, they breathed a sigh of relief to see that that was happening. And the teachers that sat together and talked about this platform, and when we were talking about, do you like this platform versus that platform, that was their big takeaway, was how user-friendly it was, how easy it was to interface, and then how they felt it was much more secure. They didn't have the same fear. I'm sure, as with change, change is hard for anyone. But we're not changing everything. We're just changing the platform. The grading system is the same. The standards are the same. It's not taking and throwing a dice to change the world. We're just simply changing the interface for input.
My concern is the implementation is not the teacher. I get the teachers are going to love it and be happy with it. Let's just hope that's what they say once it works. I've implemented a lot of software. It, like I said, it never goes the way you plan. As good as you might think you are, it always runs into problems. So you're going to be leaving us, and you're giving us the most assured confidence in the world that this is going to just go great. And I really hope it does. But the fact is, a couple of things. One, my 2.5 years on the board, this is the first time we've ever had a discussion about X2 as it relates to elementary school and problems that were X2 as it relates to elementary school.
I presented I can go back to a slideshow. Mrs. Van Twyver is nodding her head when we talked about the challenges in standards-based grading that we were facing in regards to teachers from the teachers union. We had a union committee, we had a principals committee. When we talked about the year one implementation, we had to come back for a presentation to the board.
I don't know if I was on the board at that time.
I can't remember either, but I can tell you that that is one of our big takeaways at that point were the hindrances of X2 and the issues that kept it going.
So this leads me to another question. Are there any plans to migrate from X2? Because we can't really afford two enterprise class systems, just one for grading and then the LMS in another, because they're going. I would predict that it's highly likely this is going to find its way into the middle and the high school. So that 36,000 is probably going to become close to 100,000. And X2 remains at about 100,000 if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to be doubling our costs.
Teacher Ease does not, I don't believe they have an SIS or a student information system. There are other platforms out there that we investigated and that we talked about, but we just really talked about the investment that we already had in regards to Aspen and X2 and the concern with accruing a giant shift. You could move to Power School, you could move to Jump Rope, you could move to any number of other platforms that are out there. But because so many of our systems are custom within Aspen, and we've spent so much money and time on building custom systems within Aspen, the idea was, because the frustration has been an ongoing frustration within Aspen, there have been ongoing challenges that we've sought to rectify, and each year we take the punch list in Aspen, and this was what Dr. McKinney, and when you say how is this going to be implemented, even if I'm leaving the district, I have the utmost faith in the man sitting to my left that he has a plan and is going to help ensure that plan is supported and our teachers are supported, because he's really looking to support the teachers and the students as his end goal. Having been here for 22 years and seen many assistant superintendents and many superintendents over my tenure, I can definitely tell you he's got the district's best interests at heart from what I've witnessed from his planning and his discussion. So I don't know if that means anything to you, but it does to me.
I just would like to caution Dr. McKinney about the implementation. We've had terrible comments all along about the way we implement things, and I'd hate for this to start off on the wrong foot too, because teachers are not getting what they think they're going to get or whatever. So I would just caution about that. I think Mr. Kaufman is right about that. You know, you just have to be cognizant of past history. So
I think one of the things we wanted to be cautious of as we were talking about this is not to run into the pitfalls that we had in competencies in our initial launch. For those of you that were on the board, I think Ms. Van Twyver, you're the only one that's here that was there then. But if you think back to our initial competencies where we had to do the dual grading systems, where the teachers were having to put it in Aspen and traditional grading and put it in Aspen as competency grading, it was arduous for the teachers. So really, we didn't want to make more work from the teachers by, if we were to say pilot this in certain locations and not others, then that involves that need for a dual grading system, because you'd have to still keep the record in Aspen and keep the record in Teacher Ease. And so it really turns into kind of a kerfuffle in that area, and we didn't want that to occur.
are there other questions from the committee? No, I'm going to cut you off for a minute and let Ms. Porter and Ms. Raymond have a chance here.
Have you gone yet? Go right ahead. My question is about the comments. How do teachers put those in? Is it a drop-down or a narrative?
So we have the opportunity to do both. There has been some conversation in regards to, in science and social studies, make them a drop-down comment because it will allow that information to populate as to where the children are functioning and what, if you think about the language on the report card, it says something to the effect of vocabulary and content and earth science. It will allow the parents to know Susan is performing well and in the earth science topic that we have at this grade level, and
So the other ones are narrative.
the other one would be narrative.
Excuse me. So the school office is still inputting all of the student data into X2, and so I, as a classroom teacher, am always going to have an updated list on my report card. So it's not like I'm going to find that a student is missing.
Within 24 hours, the
24
data
hours,
should
that's-
update.
That's awesome. And the comments will only be in English? Because I know the report card, it's saying that that can be in Spanish or perhaps Portuguese.
So the comment interface, as with any translation software, isn't perfect. You and I both know that
So it's-
it would stay in English because if you start to put the comments into Spanish, oftentimes you can be talking about trees
it's
when you
not
mean to
good.
talk about something else, mice, I don't know.
So are the teachers printing their report cards, or will the office still print?
So we had transitioned this past year to have the teachers print their report card drafts to be able to go through and verify and edit. They would still have that functionality within Teacheries to be able to print their own report cards. And we also have the ability for parents to opt in or out of printing a paper report card. Parents, once that parent platform is open, would have that ability to access the report card, should they choose, by an iPhone app or by a computer
On an ongoing basis or on a certain date?
on a certain date.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Raymond?
My questions were just answered. I just wanted to ask about the comments and as well paper report cards, because I know on the elementary level, the children and parents enjoy having that paper, to share with various relatives and such. So we will still have paper report cards.
So what is awesome about this system is that you, as the parent, once the system is open, when we get to the point where teachers are comfortable and ready to go, is that you would also be able to see ongoing, really cool charts and graphs that the kids are going to be able to celebrate their learning and see how they're growing and changing. You, as the parent, can opt into a paper printed report card from the school, but you can also have access to any of your child's reports. And if this were something that were to continue from year to year, and let's say you lost Johnny's report card from second grade, first trimester, you moved and missed it, you'd be able to go back yourself and print a historical copy of that report card.
Oh, that's cool.
Ms. Porter?
So since we've been grading on so you could get a B, a P, an F. So like when parents see those posted grades, that's not necessarily what's going to be at the end because you're looking at the end of the year standard. So is this is putting in, so it's not taking an average of those grades because we're not doing averages, we're doing a growth model.
Right, so as we talked about, this is a platform designed directly for standards-based reporting. So I think when you were talking earlier about competencies, Mr. Kaufman, and talking about the idea of the new system that we used in competencies that was new to us, and we had tried several different decaying averages and trying to use the language of standards-based reporting in a system that was designed for traditional grading, this system is designed for standards-based grading. So we have the ability to do a power law or to do a decaying average or to choose the different methods of calculation within Nashua to make sure that it is not just taking an average of the overall score, because truly as you're looking to kind of drop those earlier scores and see how they're performing at the end of the trimester or the end of the school year.
Sorry, I have another question. So am I able to get a different, so if we're switching classes for science or social studies or something, I can get a different class list so that's going to all be easy.
based on how they're scheduled in your office. So that would be that great information in and great information out from the office. So in Nashua currently with X2, some schools share passwords across the, which isn't the best practice. Some schools will schedule students into those classrooms. So if a child was a shared student where you took a different teacher's classroom, you would then have a roster that would reflect that.
So I can input the grades and it will go to your class list.
Correct.
I have a question, and I'm not sure what the question is, to be honest with you. We talked about, you said it could work with iReady too, didn't you? No.
Clever, the system that uploads the
Correct.
information, works with iReady as well as TeacherEase.
Okay, thank you, that was my question. All right, anything else? Ms. Hohensie, and then Mr. Coffin.
Thank you. Last year, when we were working with the interim superintendent and the assistant interim superintendents, they did want to go forward with the middle school. It wasn't them that were holding back. It was the board that was asking for that data to make a driven decision-making. I know that there are some places that have reverse course on the competency-based grading. Some states, like New Hampshire, has competency-based education that's required, but not the grading. I think it was Maine that just reversed courses, and I think even Rochester is reversing courses on some of their competencies. So I just would be it would be very helpful to me to see that this is working at the high school. I think it would work fine in the elementary school. I think that's a different paradigm. I think you can break up the skill sets in easier pieces than in the high school. So I would really like to see the reports that we had asked for before we go into the middle school. So as much as we're doing this with the hopes that it's going to be uniform, I want to make sure that it's uniform and constructive, and that we're improving learning before we make that big decision. So I'm hoping we can get those data reports, because it's not always so good just to jump on every bandwagon. We have the open classrooms and we had to reverse. Some things just need a little more scrutiny.
Yeah, one last question,
Thank you.
question, just one.
So I would ask, first let me say I don't question Dr. McKinney's motives about wanting to do the best for the district or whatever. I'm just concerned with the ramifications, having experienced too many software implementations. But my question is, can we please have, as part of this proposal, a full budget impact, say for the next 2 or 3 years, and include what the costs might be if we decided to go to the high school and middle school? Because once you put this in, I think it's going to kind of spread like wildfire if it does what you say it does. That's just my gut feeling. If it's good, it's going to be everywhere, demand right away. And I've just doubled my software costs. And at that point, you're going to probably need another person to support it in spite of what you might, all good intentions aside. So I would just appreciate, and I think it needs to be some consistency, because my recollection, and I always struggled with the fact that there were IT costs in curriculum, and IT was making curriculum decisions, right? That Discover, I forget the name of it, something Discovery.
Discovery Streaming?
Thank you. That decision to cancel that was made in Rick Fahrenkopf's presentation. It wasn't done by curriculum people. So there needs to be some clarity as to who's driving the bus here when it comes time for IT expenses. I thought they would come out of IT. Mm-hmm. I view this as an IT expense because it's software. It's not a curriculum. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I do ask for at least a 3-year projected cost, and if you need to throw a person in there, by all means do that. But just let us know what we're getting into, because I think right now it's...
Money's tight.
Yeah.
I would, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can bring that to you. I would defer to Ms. Fitzpatrick. She's looking to re-engage the secondary level in competency-based education, so I'd like to do some work at the high school level and then re-energize the work at the middle school level. So I don't know if you're going to see costs coming next year. It would probably be a year after that, but I can connect with her and bring you the information you need. The second thing I'd like to share is that I hear the piece around competency-based education. I would just encourage the board to be open to hearing more about competency-based grading and standards-based grading and competency-based education. Ms. Grantham and I lived through a long march where we applied to a number of grants, and a lot of that at the state level is tied to those sort of things and showing evidence of those practices. So I would just hate to take away opportunities from the district without being able to put our best step forward and provide some more opportunities for kids, because a lot of the competitive grants that were there in Title IV did go around those areas. Thank you.
My next question is, and hopefully this is the last one, is implementation, how long it would take. I mean, we have to bring this to the full board before you can actually do anything or whatever. So when's our next board meeting? Do we know?
I think it's September 10th,
September 10th?
that Monday.
That gating item is kind of tight, I would think, for you, but is September 10th going to be okay for this to come forward for an approval?
We'll do what we can. I think we're going to continue moving forward and working with the company and getting things set up and sharing our report card and getting a framework in place. We certainly can have a training in place for some of the train the trainer piece, and then our opening day presentation for teachers, but some of the in-depth pieces would certainly have to take place at a later time. I'm certainly hoping to have them back in district on the November in-service day for moving training forward, and then doing grade level training on the October early release day. So we've already designated some time, but I'm just looking for support from the board to move forward.
Yeah, Dr. McKinney, I get really uptight. This happens to us all the time, that we're always under the gun to get things approved. And I would hope that the administration in the future would plan a little bit better so that we don't feel like if we don't know that it's going to be just $36,000 or it's going to be more for years, to come, I think that's putting us in a bad spot. That we have to say, okay, well, we're going to give you $36,000 to do this first pass on it, and then we may be locking ourselves into a bigger bill for the next couple of years. So this always is a problem for me. Ms. Raymond, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion, but I'd like to echo you on that. Like, this would have been a great discussion in May or June so that we could have those answers, and so that, if we had done this in May or June, then there would have been plenty of time for planning and rolling out and making sure our teachers felt comfortable before the school year started. And I just want to be respectful of the teachers as well, because I think it's very frustrating as an employee to kind of be on the back end of an initiative that you weren't prepared for, and now you have to jump into it while you're starting your year. Having said that, I move to approve $36,000 to implement the Teacher Ease software in the elementary schools.
Second.
Okay.
That's right.
Dr. McKinney had wanted to make a comment, so. Did you?
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to share that this isn't a surprise to everyone. We did share that we were looking into these pieces. I've spoken to the principals that we're exploring this opportunity. I think after living through the budget season, it is a challenge when the budget doesn't get approved till late in June, and then trying to see where everything falls in and advocating for certain resources in certain places. But I think there is a willingness on the teachers to find a better solution. They have been a part of the work with Ms. Grantham, and I'll just take a moment to thank her for her years of leadership in this initiative, which has been huge. And also being at the building level when progress reports and report cards come out, the level of stress and frustration that happens during that week is substantial, and I do feel like this can help us save time and ease frustration as well.
Well, to me, it looks like a very, very good program. I have have to trust your judgment in that. But we'll be the ones that hear the complaints and gripes and, all these people talking, so we're hoping that it goes smoothly. And is there any more discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There you go, Dr. McKinney. You got it.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Ms. Grantham.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your new job. I'm sorry you're leaving us, because I've worked with you for 6 years now? Yep, and
That's right, 6 years.
it's been pleasurable, and our loss is their gain, but you're not too far.
I'm just
You can
over the
still
bridge.
scream at you. Okay?
He
Thank
still
you.
has my email, don't worry.
Yes, that's good. Thank you very much. Okay, the next one is the instructional materials left over from the June meeting that we had questions on, so.
So I put together a framework for instructional materials, expenditures, and projected costs over the next number of 5 years, starting from last year going forward. And this provides just a working draft for expending funds out of the curriculum budget and by level. So if you wanted to go through it, we're happy to speak to some of them, but it's outlined in your packets. So we're in FY19. So we've spent about $40,000 for the Eureka materials that we've been using K-5, the student workbooks and some of the print materials there. And then we've been doing some trainings for the ELA pilot, so there's an allocation of funds there as well. I put some money allocated for social studies. I'd like to move forward with some professional development and curriculum refinement. There was a proposal that was started in the UAs, particularly in the music department, for some materials a few years ago that wasn't finalized. So in meeting with Tom Souza, I allocated some funds for that initiative as well. Moving to the middle school level, there are new costs there for Study Sync. So the Study Sync we paid last year is for 5 years. This money that I've allocated is for purchasing some of the novels that are in Study Sync, so we can have the actual full novel at all the middle schools this year. And I spread the cost over 2 years for that. You'll see money there for Eureka, now that that's moving into the middle school. The same basic student workbook, kind of student worksheets that they do for Eureka are now at the middle school 6 through 8. The money you see there is for the Next Gen Science pilot, the programs and materials that Ms. Janisic spoke to last year. And then these materials at the bottom kind of tie also into the high school level. In going to joint head teacher meetings at the 2 high schools, the materials that they're using in world language, those are high school courses, so whatever they're using at the high school level, they also need that available to them at the middle school level as well. And then moving to the high school level, there's an ongoing need for replacing novels at the high school level. I can only imagine the wear and tear those little books take with high school students, so the ELA department has asked for funds to replace the novels, and we've been replacing them with a more durable permabound. It's just a hardcover book that kind of lasts longer than just a traditional paperback that just gets worn down. I think we've all had a paperback that's been held together by duct tape. These can kind of survive some of the wear and tear a little bit better. And then by departments, the department heads at the 2 schools have given recommendations for improvements in instructional materials for their departments: math, science, social studies. Again, the world language piece that you saw before, and health really relies on using some online subscriptions as opposed to a print text, because some of the material is always changing. So again, this is kind of like a working draft. It provides a framework for going forward. It's certainly subject to change and dependent on budgetary support. So the next step for this would be for myself and Ms. Fitzpatrick to revisit the curriculum team and the high school head teachers and see if this works for them as well as their ongoing needs for curriculum and instruction.
Well, I'm very pleased to see this 5-year plan. Very good. I like that. I'm a little concerned about the 1920, $422,000. That's, I mean, I don't know what our budget is right now for books.
Around 500.
25?
It's around 500,000.
500,000? Okay, so that's within that limit. That one kind of grabbed me.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yep.
Some of that, obviously, there's a chunk here for what comes out of the ELA pilot and what materials would want to be purchased. If this was all done in 1 year, this is probably the number you could be looking at. But if we were to spread it over a couple of years, that certainly could be decreased. But that's a large part of that and certainly an ongoing priority.
Well, it's not asking more than what we normally do, so this is a draft, correct? So it's subject to change potentially. So I just want to be able to present it to the board in that way. Any questions? Mr. Coffin, and then Ms. Johansson.
Thank you. These are textbooks. We also have one thing for health online subscription. Is that including all the online subscriptions for the other subjects? Because that would add to the total bottom line. Sometimes we get a textbook, sometimes we get a subscription, like the math, the Eureka, we're doing a lot of printing, so it all adds into the curriculum costs per year.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay, so I think we put in something in the middle school last year. Was it social studies that had a subscription? I mean, do we have all the online subscriptions in lieu of textbooks in this list?
This is instructional materials. This would include both. I'm not sure if you're referring to StudySync, but there were periodicals that were purchased before at the middle school level, and we've asked them to utilize the components in StudySync to save costs. It used to be about $5,000 at the middle school level, but we can get the same content from what's in StudySync. So it's kind of hard to show all the parts that are in here, but this is one piece to the overall budget.
I thought there was a government book that we
This is
had.
civics.
Civics. So I don't see, was that high school or middle school?
It's high school.
It sounds more like high school.
There's nothing in this year or last year for that. And it was partly textbooks and partly online subscriptions, because the online subscriptions were very beneficial to the teachers, helped them do lesson preparation, and I'm not seeing that included in this list. So that's what it would be helpful if it was all inclusive.
The last conversation I had with Mr. McQuilkin before he moved to his new directorship, this is those funds here. In social studies at high school, there's $50,000 for U.S. world history that we're spending this year, and then there's another $50,000 for next year. That's for both high schools. The last proposal that he gave to me was splitting the cost over 2 years. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but I can go back and check.
Could you show me that on the list? Because I'm looking at the back side, civics and economics last year, and this year is blank, no cost.
Here's 1819,
That's elementary,
page 2,
page 2,
1819.
civics and
There's
economics.
$50,000 for this year, and here's 50 for next year.
Oh, it's just 2 courses, okay.
Can I contribute to this, Ms. Ventura?
Sure.
So in my recollection, and I think it was the 17-18 year, we spent, the requested amount was about $105,000 for the civics textbooks. And that included, for several years, an online component. And I think, to follow up on what Ms. Hohensee is driving at, I think it would be extremely helpful for the board for the future to understand, because there is a shift going, right, from the hard copy, hold them in your hand textbook to the online course materials. And as that shift occurs, I think it would be helpful for a report like this to include what is being spent in textbooks. And now, if the textbooks include an online capability, then please note that. But they're also priced out separately, because we know that you could buy a textbook without the online. So the civics and economics line here doesn't show what I recall was probably about $100,000 or $105,000 in 17-18. I think it was that year. So, because this suggests we only spent $83,000 in 17-18, and we know that that's not right. So 17 and 18 should be reflective of an actual number, should it not be? Because we've spent it. We have history. We should have receipts and invoices. So if you're going to include historical information, and I think that's very valuable, I would ask that this be updated with what we actually spent that year. Because otherwise it doesn't help as a comparison, because we really don't know I don't think $83,700 is accurate for what was spent in the high schools. I'm sorry, and that's the entire column, right? Oh, it doesn't include the front page.
It does.
It does. So then there's 250,000 listed that never made it to the second page.
No, that's true.
So,
80 and
I mean,
30.
it seems that it's the high school total, not the full column total.
Sometimes they add it and sometimes they don't add the 2 pages, so it's
Yeah, so,
hard to follow this.
and I would ask, you can also date these things and who prepares them, so we know if we keep these things, what document we're looking at. But I think this is a great chart.
Yep.
I think it should be expanded upon. I think it should be updated with actual costs. And the other thing, I have one other question, particularly as it relates to the Eureka math. These are for the materials that we acquire from Eureka, is that right? These are new materials.
Yes and no. I don't know, we're adopting it. It's a open source material. We take their workbooks and we modify them for what we believe works for our kids, and then we print those and make them available, except that for some levels and units, the teachers prefer just to do it on their own. So we try to be as cost efficient as possible.
Because my recollection, there's a budgetary line item of about $100,000 to pay for the printing of the materials you just spoke about, the workbooks. And they go to an outside vendor. Is that right?
That was the number when I came a year ago, and we've reduced that number, I believe, because we changed vendors and we saved money.
So what was $100,000 a year in print costs is reflected here as $40,000 each of the next several years? Is that what you're projecting? Or is there still other printing that occurs?
I would say between 70 and 80. If you add the elementary and the middle together, you're probably like 30 or 40 each.
Okay, so
Oh, I
elementary
see. That's,
in the
okay.
middle, okay, 72,000, okay.
And this
Those
year,
are the workbooks that we would have known to be that $100,000 that was outsourced, that you now knocked it down?
when we bought them directly from the publisher, I do believe that was the amount that you're
Okay,
referring to.
all right,
And then
but
it
it's the
did-
same thing, though?
Right, we just printed ourselves. Yep.
Okay, all right, because I just was hoping that, because budgetarily speaking, it was in a separate budget line item under printing. It wasn't treated as a curriculum cost. Here you have it, I think more appropriately the case, put where, it is a curriculum-related cost, as a printing cost.
If you'd like to talk to Mr. Donovan, get out of the curriculum department, I'd be thrilled, but when he
No,
comes
I think it
asking for,
belongs here.
it's usually in that department, yep.
Okay, thank you.
So this year, 18-19, you want to spend $219,000. Are you going to do it all at one time, or how's it going to work?
Some of the ordering happens over the summer. Some I need, obviously, head teacher help with. It's one of those ongoing things that we manage. Obviously, for Eureka, we need stuff in kids' hands for day one and teachers' hands. We did order new teacher manuals for the middle school level. We did go ahead with the Next Gen Science. The novels for middle school, we can start the year, but we'll have them kind of phased in as they go through the units. So It's one of those things that we kind of constantly are working on.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. So if you look at the current year, 18 and 19, and that totals up to 219,000, does that not include, I didn't add it up, does that not include the elementary, middle school side? Because we approved nearly $500,000 of curriculum-related expenses we have budgeted for this current fiscal year that we're talking about right here. So same comment to the previous year. We know what we spent. We should have actuals in 17, 18, and I would ask that this be updated to include the budget that we passed, because you gave us a specific proposal as to how things would be distributed out of that 500,000. So I would ask that that be reflected in this chart as well. What we passed as a budget, this number here shouldn't be 219,000, it should be closer to 500.
Yeah, it doesn't include the front. I was just adding it in my
Oh,
head,
thank
and it's about 400 something.
And my recollection of 500,000 could be wrong, but I think we held that number.
Dr. McKinney?
Our challenge when talking about the budget is still that it's 566, but it encompasses a number of different areas. Books is just one portion of the curriculum budget. When you add in other things that are not just on this sheet, like additional hours, when we pay teachers to engage in after-school work for steering committees or any other ongoing initiatives, that's one of the pieces of the curriculum budget. So it's unlikely that this sheet alone is going to get you to 566. There are other pieces in the curriculum budget as well. Professional development, conferences, there's a technological part where we've been helping deploy some Chromebooks. So this is just one component of the overall curriculum budget.
I was going to look at that from a curriculum standpoint, how much money we're spending on curriculum. So if we could come up with just a budget for that part, it would be really great. So that we know if we're spending too much or too little or whatever, just on curriculum, it would be great. I'd be glad to work with you on that, but that was one of my interests, was just to see how much money we actually do spend on curriculum. That includes, you know, redoing standards or whatever, you know?
So all of that, I work with my curriculum team and Ms. Fitzpatrick, Carmen, and plan the whole year out. So how many meetings do we have? How many people are on the committee? How many times are you going to meet? And all that gets factored in here. So there's, you know, it's not uncommon for like $20,000 to $30,000 to be allocated for additional hours. Things like when Ms. Grantham is here and doing early admission testing for preschoolers into kindergarten, we compensate her for, you know, the $25 an hour for her to do those sort of things. So it's not just all in one area.
Yeah, well, that's what I would like to see. How is that all broken out?
I would just ask for understanding and flexibility as a, you know, to be able to look at all our resources, not only budgetarily, but in grants to meet the needs of what's going on here, because that's key. For example, we're trying to do a couple of things with professional development this year, so I got to have flexibility in both budgetary resources and Title II, for example, to bring in some quality PD for teachers.
Yeah, well, the flexibility is fine. I mean,
Okay.
I understand that you're going to move things around because of needs and whatever, but
Thank you.
we never have the total picture for some program that we put in. So, and it's like, I really would like to know how much money are we spending on curriculum so that we can move more money into it. I'm really on your side. Yeah.
I want to reinforce that because it's so important. You know, at the end of the day, you're coming to us for money. You asked for $32,000 tonight, right? So you're usually asking for money. So we need to understand, we recall maybe what's in the budget, what we've paid for in the past. We think these bottom line totals are going to actually represent what's in the column year over year. I remembered 500, you said it was what, 566? But for us to understand the breakdown and see it repeatedly is good for the board. It's good for public disclosure. It makes your case even stronger because you could say 2 years ago I had X number of PD hours And I need to repeat that because we're introducing the similar kind of thing again. But that's what it cost us actually 2 years ago. I'm going to have a repeat cost in the future, or even if it's just PD for new teachers, and there may be a curriculum, a part of that you can bill out to curriculum. I mean, that's helpful to us because at the end of the day, we're here to approve money. That's really all administrators want from us, let's be honest about it, is they want approval to spend money. So the easier you, speaking to the administration, can make our understanding of the budget and what lies behind it, makes us have an easier decision to make. So, like I said, I think the beginnings of this chart are very, very strong and helpful, and I would just ask that you build it out, and to Mr. Van Twyver's point, and then I'll stop. The notion of what a program costs, like I can't get an answer to what does CTE cost, or what does 11th grade cost, or something like that. And I would like to know that because I want to understand equity I want to understand what we spend on academics in the high school, and I want to understand what we spend on CTE in the high school. And based upon all my questions to date, maybe you can look into this a little bit. It's not easy to figure out because you might be teaching English through the CTE program. So is that academics or is that where did the money, under what program was it spent? Because we need to understand our costs. We care about that. The public cares about what the costs are. We need your help in understanding them. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. McKinney.
I think I've shown I'm more than happy to keep bringing the information you need. I'm just asking for finding a happy balance because certainly this takes a considerable amount of time and effort. And for the first month of school, my priority is kids, new teachers,
Understandable.
and new administrators. So,
Get Mr. Donovan's right-hand man there to do it for you.
so I'm happy to generate the information you need, and I will talk further with you about the programmatic costs that you're looking for, so I have an understanding of what you're looking for, so I can bring it to you. I would just ask for your understanding in that, because we have new admin. I met with all of them. We have new teachers. That's my focus for the first month. Thank you.
Opening school is tough. Yeah, we understand that. And the fact, I mean, like, just this is moving along in the direction that we like to see. So the 5-year plan. So progress is good. Anything else on the books? Okay, I guess we're now ready for iReady. Oh, that's so funny. We're ready for iReady.
So the next sheet in your packet is just an explanation of iReady. I think you've seen the sheet before, but I just wanted to frame our conversation again of where we use it, what we use it for, and those sort of things. So when I reviewed the minutes from the last meeting, you had asked for an end-of-year report on iReady, and that had come through from the curriculum team of our curriculum associates. So we can look at some of the pieces here. And I apologize for scrolling through the presentation. I did start, by the way, revising the last presentation I put together, but I just stopped because I'm waiting again for final information from the state on the summative assessment, the SAS. So I haven't gotten the final scores. I only have the preliminaries as well so far. So the first bar graph you see here is the comparison between fall and spring performance of students reaching mid-proficiency, mid on level or higher on the fall and the spring. So green is fall and blue is spring. So you can see the growth our students have made over the course of the year.
This is for math?
Right now we're doing math, yes, thank you.
Okay.
This next slide shows the national comparison of our students on mid-level or higher. So blue is the district and the gray is the national average.
Could we go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
All these N numbers are the numbers, the cut numbers? on each
Those are the
grade?
number of students.
Oh, the number of students, sorry.
Ms. Van Twyver, point of order.
Yeah.
We had this data presented to us previously. I think one of the things we asked for was the third testing period, which is not in this report. That's right, Dr. McKinney. You just said it was not available from the state.
No, this is.
Those are two different
iReady.
things. This, as it says here, end of year implementation. This is from the winter to the end of the year for iReady. What I was speaking to is the SAS, the Student Assessment System for the state of New Hampshire, hasn't released the final scores.
So what you gave to us the last time,
I gave you the preliminary scores for SAS, and I presented you the winter scores for iReady.
But this shows the year, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Fall to spring. So
this
we're
is the
getting
full year?
The beginning
sir.
of the year and
Okay,
the end
thank
of the year. And so you said that the N number is the number of students.
I'm trying to get back to that slide, sorry. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. McKinney, what does the early mean? Because fall, early on-level placement, it says it under spring too, not just, it's highlighted too, which makes me wonder. Under in the chart itself, if you go down,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it says fall performance early on-level placement, which makes sense to me because those are people who are hitting it early. And then it says spring early on-level placement. I don't know what that means.
So if you were to think of it as a band for you to be proficient, so early would be the beginning part, mid, and then the higher part. So if you were to chunk that into thirds, that's one way of looking at it. Do we do this slide already?
No,
Okay, we'll go to this slide. So this is math, comparison between district performance and the national average. And you can see for a number of the areas we're at or above the national average, except for this sixth grade cohort here. Well, this was the new chart that we talked about last time, showing kids coming down from tier 3, students that would require some more intervention, and approaching from fall to spring. Show the percentages by reduction by grade in tier 3 over the course of the year. So that's what you would, for this chart or bar graph, you would want to see the numbers coming down.
Dr. McKinney or Ms.
Go
Van
ahead.
Twyver, thank you. Do we have any information, even if it's just from teachers, about what they think is going on in sixth grade? Because it looks like we're doing at or above the national average for everything except fifth is a little lower, but sixth grade we have that dip. And is it the transition to middle school? Is it a brand new concept? I'm curious about what's going on there, and if there are any work is being done, by the teachers or committees to try and figure that out.
I'm happy to look into that further. I haven't seen anything or shared anything specifically, but I do think that a nice remedy for that is curriculum continuity and having Eureka go in
Oh, that's
K-8.
true.
So I'm looking forward to some gains in that area, but I can check with our math coach.
Thank you.
Yep.
can I just ask the clarification so I understand this, what this chart is saying? Let's take the second grade. There were 19% who were reading below, one level below. So in other words, they were reading at grade 1. And then at the spring part, that dropped down to 3%. Is that what we're? Oh, did I jump ahead?
I'm just
Maybe
trying
I
to
did.
match the chart you're speaking to. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fall, spring distribution of tier 3 students? I might have jumped ahead on you. I'm sorry.
you used the word reading, but it was a math chart.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a page number at the bottom.
Page 11? I'm sorry. It's
Okay,
math,
go ahead.
okay. Just so that I understand, all right? So grade 2,
Mm-hmm.
there were 19% of those students were reading one level below. In other words, they were reading at grade level 1. at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, that dropped down to 3%. That's quite a big improvement from my point of view. In fact, I found a lot, if I understand this correctly, I found this chart to be amazing, I guess is the word. That, you know, I mean, that's a big drop, a very big drop in math particularly. So I think I understand what this is saying to me now, but I'm a little interested in the percentage that it dropped to on all of them, really. Mr. Hohensee?
Thank you. I see that they have big drops in the primary grades, but the problem is like 8th grade, you've got 34% that are one or more grade levels below at the beginning of the year and 29% at the end of the year. So you're only catching up 5% by this chart. It doesn't look as well as the growth from the earlier years. I'm wondering, do we still have the functionality of that analysis that we had for iReady that broke down the competencies so we could see what mathematical competencies that they're missing? Because that was a tool that we must have spent $300,000 developing, and I haven't seen anything this whole year on using that tool. So that, I mean, this is just the overall snapshot, but that was the analysis of why we had these results. Is there any way we can get that that analysis done for this year? Because I know the software was developed, the district has it. All they need to do is use it.
No, I don't believe that to be completely accurate. iReady, the learning progressions that are out there for standards are out there. It's in Eureka, it's on the web. Those are free to use. The iReady is linked to standards, not competencies. It shows you the areas they're deficient in. So the teachers are very proficient in utilizing the online platform from Curriculum Associates and running reports and seeing where the kids fall on, above, or below grade level, the areas they need to work in, and they can use those instructional groupings, is actually the name of the report, to target their instruction. So,
okay, standards, competencies, interchangeable in my mind, but those deficiencies, we used to have those shared with the board, so we could see what things they were stumbling on. That was the tool that was developed in the district, so we could see, like you would take a competency or standard and it would either be green for good, yellow, or red, so we could see how students were performing grade by grade. We had really fabulous reports last year using that tool.
if you're looking for, I can certainly present overall trends in student performance and areas of growth and overall areas of, not concern, but areas of ongoing work. It's something we can provide from iReady as well.
Well, that's what this is. I wanted specific. This is overall.
And I'm telling you, I can provide that from iReady in the level of specificity that you're asking for, in domain areas specific to the subject area. So for math, numbers, patterns,
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah, I would like to see that too.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, it certainly is a time saver if you know exactly what concepts these children are missing, that you only have to retrain them on that, as opposed to doing the whole class over again. So to me, that's an important, I think that's revolutionary in education, to be able to pinpoint those things that the students are having trouble with, not only district-wide, but in a school-wide and also in a class, class-wide.
I think good teachers know instinctively to go one step backwards, to find the areas of concern, do some reteaching and remediation, and move kids along. It's not something that, has to be done at this level, but I'm certainly happy to share the information. We have a district data team, we have school data teams, and everything that I've read shows where it meets the most is at the classroom level and PLCs and grade level teams. And that's the direction that we're proceeding in terms of getting the data to the teacher teams so they can modify their instruction. It should be happening day to day, from formative assessments all the way through on summative assessments as well.
It would, I'll take Ms. Raymond first and then Ms. Porter.
It would be interesting, though, to see if there are trends within schools or between schools on gaps. I don't, gaps isn't the word I want, but, specific,
In concepts.
specific concepts that are challenging to students in a trending way. How teachers will use this, I don't know, but it will be interesting because then that we could talk about resources for that. Because again, we're like the people who give the money, so I would very much like to put the money in a place where it is helpful to our kids. So.
Ms. Porter?
As far as this goes, what you're asking for is teachers do that routinely because you can, this allows you to get a report by your class. You can get individual student reports, so I can look at each individual student and see their scores, where are their weaknesses, their strengths. It's going by those specific domains, numbers and operations or geometry. So even though it's not showing here, this is a tool that teachers use routinely to zero in on individual students or their class or a grade level or their school.
You're saying that you have a tool that shows those
This
things.
tool, yep.
iReady.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are the things that we'd like
Yeah.
to see. If you can see that as a teacher,
Right.
we'd like to see that too.
Right, so even though you don't, I guess my point is that it's being done. Even if you're not seeing it right here, it's not in this particular slide, you can feel confident knowing that teachers are doing that routinely, and their data teams and their school teams are looking at that.
And the way I would feel confident if I see paper that shows that, okay? I want to see a chart that shows, in school number 1, there were 50 kids that missed this concept. That's what I want to see. And what are we doing to train them on that concept? That's what I would like to see. I didn't realize that teachers got that. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you. I agree with Dr. McKinney that teachers instinctively know. I mean, they instinctively know before the test where their class is. The test is a tool that helps not only them, but the public see how well they're doing. This is it helps the board. The more data we have, the better decision-making we can make. And I guess we got spoiled the last year or two because we got all that information, and it was very useful and helpful. So if there's some way we can use either the iReady charts or the in-house software that was developed over the past couple of years, I think the board would benefit from seeing that data.
Oh, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. So to Ms. Raymond's point, the software we keep talking about did in fact reflect the trend at a school level, at a district level, and a grade level. So it provided it. But my question has to deal with 6, 7, and 8 middle school, and that the growth is not as strong as it is in 1 through 5. So does this help make the case, I may regret saying this, does this help make the case for competencies in the middle school? If we're driving, it's just the grading that we're not?
It's state law. We have to
Okay.
be doing competencies.
Okay. So this is the weak spot. We've seen it before. I mean, one of the few things our board agreed upon, Ms. Grantham referred to it earlier, was that we wanted, our goal hasn't changed. Even for the strategic plan, I would argue, we want all our students to read at grade level, math level, et cetera, at 3rd grade. We want that level of proficiency at 3rd grade so that they're better prepared when they get into the next set of academic endeavor. We don't hold students back. We don't require an end-of-year competency test that says, okay, we know you're ready, you're in 4th grade, we know that you've got this handled, we know you're ready for 5th grade. We don't do that. And I want to just throw out the idea is, do we need to do something like that? Because if students if they don't have everything in place by the end of 3rd grade and we drop them into 4th grade and they're still lacking some skill at the end of that year, they're now a year plus behind. That's how you become a Tier 3 student, right? Is that you didn't learn what we had hoped you would have learned previously. We moved them on, so we create these Tier 3s ourselves, right? Kids learn at different rates and are motivated differently. How do we put in a system where students really do move at their own pace to the point of, and there's an article I guess I read recently that spoke to, maybe you don't have a structured grade level. If you're competency-based, then you go on to the next thing. You don't have to be grade 4 immediately because the calendar says so, you're ready for grade 5. If we're competency-based, we know if they have those skills or not, but we still move them into the next grade. So what can we do to ensure that we don't make Tier 3s? If the kids aren't ready, they're not ready. We need to keep them in a half grade, if I dare say it. And I've had this conversation with a couple of teachers and a principal who actually thought that we need something like that. Can that be done here, Dr. McKinney? Is that something we can consider for the future and incorporate it into the strategic plan, that we're going to say the kids move forward to the next grade when they've completed the competencies demonstrably in the grade that they're completing, and they don't go on unless they've completed them. Right now, we will move students forward even if they get the equivalent, well, I was going to say a D, but whatever that is these days. So how do we put accountability into it so kids don't move too far too fast?
I think I would caution about making overgeneralizations based on one data point from iReady. You don't have any, it doesn't show you which kids were meeting or exceeding one year or below grade level the next. This is just one data point based on students taking it 3 times a year. And not to mention, part of my business overall is educating young people. So you don't have scores in here about how people can shake hands, look you in the eye, problem solve, be a good teammate, be a cooperative role model, all of those other things. So I understand the urgency around the scores and the numbers, but I also I think there's value in our work in looking at a balanced assessment system that looks at all the numbers, because already here, I understand what you're pointing out in middle school, but I've taught middle school. They're not probably terribly engaged in what their scores may be for some, and there's little to no repercussion of what the score may be here. And even though I'm reporting out on them, the scores are what they are. But on the other hand, using something like Teacher Ease, we can have curriculum-based measures that are tied to the students' grades, that are tied to their parents' reporting, that do validate their student performance, and it's up to the teacher to take up all these data points as a whole and see where student progress is relative to the standards and end of grade level expectations. So I'm not going to speak to the other things you mentioned here. I'm just reporting out on the numbers as reported to me in iReady.
Well, I'm looking forward to the data that is available. We've been kind of starved for it. The board has asked for data. They invested. We had 2 data analysts. We spent, I think it was closer to $500,000 over 3 years on developing that tool. And this last year, we saw none of the results out of that tool. You'll note when this board, I think the new board, one of the things we received was the essential characteristics of a high-functioning Board of Ed, and one of those was to make data-driven decisions. And we're here to ask for that data. That's why we asked for more of a superset when it came to the budget recommendations and the historical information to understand the full scope. We're trying to understand, we know there are trends because we've seen the data in prior years, and it was district-wide that I recall seeing. So anything you can do to provide data that gives us legitimate data points with, obviously, your assessment, because that's what you're here to do, is share with us what these things really mean. But I'm just concerned, we move students too far, too fast, then they end up as Tier 3, when if we had perhaps more intervention in place, because we knew the skills they were lacking in, then we could intercept them before they get this far, and I'll
Doctor,
call
I'm going
trouble.
to have to
I'm gonna
interrupt you
stop.
for a minute.
Sorry.
We are now approaching our 2-hour meeting limit. Are you willing to continue on for, say, another half hour? I think we did this the last time we had talked about I-Ready. We got up to the 2 hours. So are you willing to continue for a half hour? Is that, yes, Mrs. Porter? Okay. All right, Dr. McKinney, you want to respond to him?
I would encourage the board to speak with the superintendent about the vision of data and how that's outlined either at the district level or in the strategic plan, because it's a challenge to go backwards to go forwards. Back in October, there was a vision of data included in a packet that spoke to the teach gaps, the other software that was developed by previous data analysts, which on their resignation was taken with them. It's not a district proprietary item.
That's not true. The data remained with the district. My understanding is that the laptop was returned and retained by the district from both of those employees, and that instructions on how to use that material was documented and left
None of that
behind.
that was not given to my attention. And then to the comments around data, I'm happy to provide, like I've shown, the information you're requesting, but I'm challenged by, in reading the minutes from last time, the most detailed report I've ever seen on data. This has been very enlightening, and now I'm hearing that we're not providing the information that's needed to you, because
That was
I
my
take-
comment.
I
That was
take,
my comment.
I understand, ma'am.
Okay.
But when I meet with the principals, I meet with them and they go over their data and I review it with them. It's part of their PD binder and it's included in their evaluation. And when I do walkthroughs through the building, I ask for their input and I ask them what I'm seeing. So part of my role I see is keeping tabs and the temperature on the student performance, both from doing walkthroughs, visitations with the principals, evaluating them, and running reports. I understand that we're down 2 data analysts, but some of these tools are best suited for being deployed at the building level for teachers and administrators, because that's where it all happens. But again, I continue to be open to providing data, trends. I would rather not speak on individual schools, but speak at a general level at the district. I'm happy behind the scenes to provide more information. But that's kind of where we are right now with the data, in that we meet as a district data team on a regular basis, and then the school teams meet and go over their data as well. Thank you.
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I actually have a question about the slide. So I'm interested about the slide. I'm excited to see some of the big gains in the lower levels, lower grades, even though I would love to see our end numbers be higher. But I'm particularly struck by first grade and second grade. And I'm curious, I know we don't have data yet because this is our first year with full day kindergarten, but I'm curious if in your meetings with the principals and the teachers, if you have any sense of if we expect those numbers to change this fall, since we will have kindergartners who have had a full year of instruction, whereas historically, we have a smaller percentage of kids who have gone to kindergarten and a percentage of kids who are coming in with no formal education whatsoever at grade 1.
I have a number of principals that are very interested and excited about seeing what that's going to look like, as well as the implementation of the kindergarten screening tool. So we know those kids as learners from day one, and we can differentiate instruction going through the course of the year. So that is something I'm happy to report back on.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Hansi, and then Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I've got two questions. You're aware that there was a bill that went through the legislature this year for kindergarten that we have to implement play-based learning?
I was in Concord this morning and attended the PD session, and I've already invited the presenter to come in November.
Great, great. So there'll be a little bit of a change to our program to incorporate that new law?
Ms. O'Hansi,
Not
this
much.
is
I
about
believe-
iReady.
Well, we were talking about the results from kindergarten, and this is kindergarten curriculum. And I'll get back to iReady. I just wanted to make sure that that was being implemented. So my other question, we had somebody that came from middle school that sat in the audience my first year on the board, and she lamented in public comment that a child could fail every course and know that the child was going to be promoted. So you say this is a snapshot, and you're privy to other data that we would love on all other various things. What I would like from you, if it's possible, as an administrator and viewing the whole district and each school and working with teachers, is could there be a policy that at a certain level that it would be beneficial to hold a child back? I'm thinking maybe at 5th grade to prevent him to go to middle school if his skill set is so deficient that he won't benefit. Are we promoting them to get them out of the building and out of the district faster, or would it be a benefit to the child like we used to have kindergarten and readiness and then 1st grade? So maybe there'd be a readiness between elementary and middle school, and what would the criteria be if that was beneficial? I don't necessarily need an answer today, but I just want to know if that's an interesting topic that you could think about, so if we could constructively work with those students, or just having that bar set, it might motivate some of the kids to know that if they wanted to go to the next level, well, then they had to work a little harder.
I'm happy to consider that and bring it to the superintendent's attention.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? You want to move along then? Or are we done? I think we had a couple more slides, right?
We're on page 17, moving to reading, which gives that same bar chart, green to the fall performance, blue to the spring, and the growth students have made, reaching proficiency mid-level or higher between those two assessments. You'll see the same chart again, comparing national performance, blue the district, gray the national average.
Excuse me, a question about 17. So if I pick a grade, say 2nd grade, blue is what the district performance is. Is that correct?
Spring.
I'm sorry, fall and spring.
Green is fall, blue is spring.
Okay, so this is at the second testing period. So 49% of our students are now reaching proficiency, either mid or higher. So that means 51% are not.
But they have improved from 18%.
I'm more concerned. I feel great for the kids that have improved. I'm concerned about the kids who have not. And I think I made a comment like this the last time, is we need to keep our eye on the ball for the kids that are not on this chart. And for me, 49% proficiency is great. I can see the growth. But like I said, I'm concerned about the rest of the kids that aren't on this chart. And that's where the remedial work comes in, et cetera. Ms. O'Hansi, thank you for your comment. You expressed it way better than what I was trying to say. And I think we need to have that conversation. Maybe it belongs in the context of the strategic plan. And I do just want to say one quick thing. My recollection is there is no breakout session or focus group on data as has been currently proposed in the strategic planning process as a focus group. So Ms. Porter, if you could keep that in mind, I think there really needs to be a strategic level discussion of data, what we have, what we need, what we want, what we can have, because right now it's not happening. Thank you.
Please continue, Dr. McKinney.
Page 18, the national comparison between the district and the national average. Blue is the district by grade level, gray is the national average. And you can see the performance from grades 1 through 8 there. And then the one chart again where you want to see some numbers moving down, percent of students in tier 3, on the fall to spring diagnostic assessments. Gray being the fall, blue being the spring, and the reduction over time.
Ms. Raymond.
Thank you. I have a question. Is there a way to track summer learning loss through iReady, or does it always simply do the end of the year standard?
Right now, it only does school year, fall, winter, spring. The Power Scholars report that we're working on would show that piece for students who are enrolled in Power Scholars.
Okay. I was just curious when I'm, like, if I'm looking at second to third over 2 years, but it doesn't, because it would then test just the end of the year standards for third grade, right?
Actually, let me double check. So if you were a second grader and you took it in the fall, and you wanted to see where you were in the fall and how much you're saying happened over that previous summer until you took it in September
Right,
of being behind or below grade level,
right.
you would have an indication of that. I changed my mind.
Okay, thank you. I'm just interested to see, I don't know if it's
Summer loss?
possible. Yeah, if there's summer loss. And looking at these, it doesn't, I don't know if you can, but I'm interested.
It's coming back to me. It's a little late. So yeah, because you would see that because the teacher would know this student has to make X number of points to be on a grade level or proficient. So the larger the number, the further they would be behind. So you would have a growth kind of target, which they're changing a little bit in iReady.
Okay.
The only other piece I was going to speak to is the last part of your slides. iReady is new for back to school, so they've revamped some of their interface. For kids, it'll look pretty much the same when they log in and do what they do. The teachers will have some new reporting, and there'll be some change in their growth measures that they have. Let me see if it has a new experience for administrators, new administrator reporting. Here it is. So what they're having now is typical growth, so the growth that students will need to make over the average course of a year to be on placement, and then stretch growth for kids to be grade level proficient. They give you examples of that. So for example, if you were, for example, this student here, and you were 3 levels below, typical growth of plus 30 points would get you still 1 grade level below, but if you were to keep track and make stretch growth, that would bring you to on level. So those are the 2 new kind of terms they're going to be talking about for iReady. But for the most part, for students and everyone else, it'll look exactly the same, and we'll continue with the 3 benchmarks, fall, winter, spring.
Can iReady give us reports on different groups of students, like the average group, and then those with IEPs and those with 504s? Can it do that? I'd like to see that data pulled out, because if I see a average group, an average student group, then, and they're doing really great, then that makes me very, very happy, because then I can understand that those with special needs and whatever aren't going to move as fast. Can iReady do that for us?
I don't believe that's something iReady can do, but that's something that happens at the building level with the data teams of looking at a number of different data points, and particularly the chat team we call child assistant team. They are the ones responsible for monitoring those students that are in that tier 3 kind of at-risk range, whether they have an IEP, whether they have a 504, and whether they're making growth towards grade level standards.
The SAS will do that too? The state assessment? Can
What will it
can you
do?
divide out those particular groups of students?
I don't believe so, and the new state reporting system has been slightly challenging, so it is not in its finest finished product just yet.
Okay. Oh. Mr. Coffin.
Thank you. So being able to pull out that IEP, et cetera, 504 data at the building level, I imagine is very helpful. Can they also do it for the ELL students?
The ELL team can do that as well.
Because that's the kind of data that's very helpful to the board, because your ELLs are kind of like an outlier, right? The IEPs and 504s, those groups pull down the other scores, right, when they start talking about district-wide averages. So if they can be reported to us, you know, the way you report to the state and everything is all averaged in, but at the same time broken out, so we could actually see how everybody else is doing. Because special ed and ELL make up only a small, maybe 10, 12% of the population. I think ELL is around 10, and special ed is just a couple of hundred kids. So it's really not a lot of students, but it has a high impact on the data, and it's the way it's reported. I lost what my original idea was going to be. But, oh yeah, our handout didn't include pages 20 and 21. And you skipped past that chart. Can you put it up there, because we don't have it?
I'm happy to forward you a copy, but I'd rather not speak to individual school performance in this setting, but I'm happy to give you a full copy.
Please do.
No
Send
problem.
it to the whole board.
And I also, to the point around ELL and the other data, I do have that available. I made notes but I need the state to kind of finalize their piece. And the last I heard when I went to the training over the summer is it has to go to the state board and get approved, and then it'll get released. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern. So when I have it ready, I'll let you know.
The SAS you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to call Dr. or Mr. Edelblue and tell him, hey, you know, by the time we get the data, or the time you get the data, and the year's going to be half gone, what good is it? We need the data before school starts. I'm going to talk to him about that, because it burns me. It really does. Yeah. Anything else here that you wanted to say? Okay. So, what we're looking for now is, we have the motion to approve the teacher ease at $36,000, and that will go forward to the board, and we'll justify the work that you're doing on it right now. And then for the books, Dr. McKinney, if you can update that sheet with the things that were recommended with the printed material costs, and also putting a budget line down here to see how much we approve for budgeting. So we'd have that for the board meeting too, update that. And next month, we have 4 different topics. We have professional development you're going to discuss. Vaping we're going to discuss, because Dottie's afraid we're doing too much vaping. And then we're going to discuss the possibility of putting in a sign language course, and also the, what was the other course? Cursive, yes. Give us a status on the cursive, what we do here in the district, because many of us are concerned about students not being able to write cursive, okay? Or read it. Yeah, more importantly, read it, I guess. So those will be our 4 topics for that month, okay? Is there anything else that we need to do tonight? If not, the chair entertains a motion to adjourn.
All right. I move to adjourn.
And there's a second.
Second.
Very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned at 8:18.